All right. Well, thank you to Eric for joining us. You can check out all the details at hoppyvalleybrewfest.com, I think is the address. Okay. What you can check out on stuffsummersays.com is our first ever NIL survey. Great responses, a lot of interesting responses, a lot of good responses. So we asked a few questions. Let me see, let me count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, about 5 questions. 6, 5.5, because we had a fill-in entry. And essentially what I wanted to determine, or what I wanted to set out, why I set out on this mission was, how has NIL been received? And I don't know if there's been any official polling, any official data. And this is not by any means official data or official polling, but
It's official Stuff Summer Says data.
it's at least data, right? You know what I mean? So we're gonna look at it and talk about it. Okay. We're gonna pull this live because I had a hectic day today. So bear with me as I work through spreadsheet problems. First question was, in general, do you support NIL for college athletes? How did Steve Samsel answer this question?
Oh, I checked no. Come on.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You
I would
expected
have.
that.
I checked yes. Would have
Yes.
checked yes.
And that got the majority of the responses.
And that got you the majority. 70% of people said yes on this question. 30% saying no. So wanted to get that one. The next question that I set out to ask was built around the idea of, how well do people know Penn State's NIL collective? Because I know it because I pay attention to it. And I think there were a lot of hiccups in the space, particularly with having 2 different groups. And I think people are still confused. And I know that gets alluded to in one of the write-in answers here. So let's take a look at those numbers as I slowly pull them. Okay, so we gave you 4 options. Only 3 of the options were selected. Okay.
That's good, because one of them was just a crappy throw-out answer, throw-out option. It was a bad option. Not a real option at all. I don't know. The 4th one was just made up, wasn't it? Like one was.
They were all made. Well, all of
I know,
them,
but one was really bad. One was really obviously bad. Oh my God. Okay. So how many people got the right answer?
We're gonna give you the percentage, which is
45%.
90%.
Look at that. What a smart audience we have.
Smart audience. Pay attention. So 8% selected the Blue Stripe Collective, and
they were just getting ahead on the beer.
3% selected the Lion's Den. So, and I think that was a couple.
They were probably planning on their weekend. Yeah, that's right.
So
it's all beer. Blue Stripe, Lions. It's all alcohol.
That was what I was going. That was why So
no,
I don't know.
Okay, good. So they know what's going on.
Yeah,
they want to pay them, and they know what's going on. That's what we know through the first 2 questions.
Well, okay. All right. So now comes the next question, which is an important one, because we ask, how are people doing? Or how is Happy Valley United doing? We were very specific in the wake so that you didn't get the answer if you were paying attention and there was no cheating. You shouldn't have Googled it. So we did it grade scale, A through F, no E. No, I don't know why there's no E, but there's no E. Nobody answered an A. No one answered an A.
Okay.
I'm not surprised by that, though. How would you have answered this one? Actually, wait, let me get through the results and then we can get to that.
Yeah, I didn't give him an A. I don't remember what I gave, but I didn't give him an A.
Okay. So in general, what grade would you give Penn State's NIL collective? That was the question. And let's see, 26% said B.
Wow. Okay. Tough crowd too.
C was the most selected answer at hold on, I can't round. 59%.
Okay.
D was 10%.
Yep.
And 5% said F.
Okay.
I'm not surprised by any of these.
So only 20-some%, whatever the B was, thought they're doing actually somewhat good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I probably would have C-, like C- at best, but I think year over year progression will bump it up to a C.
Yep.
I think is where I was at. What would you have answered on this?
I probably gave him a C. I mean, I'm sure I didn't give him any higher than a C. Go ahead. I don't know. They still don't feel organized to me, right? And they still feel behind the game on this. And part of that is the people like me that were the 30% that weren't giving them anything to begin with, right? Or weren't going to support them, right? I just feel like it's, if 30%, if 30% of Penn State's fan base isn't in on supporting this, they're going to struggle, right? They're just going to struggle because 30% aren't going to be behind and 30% aren't going to give money. And that's going to limit them in some ways. And I still think, I mean, it's part of the discussion, right? I just tell me you're paying for them to play. And that's not the NIL's fault, but go ahead and say, this is what we are. Boom.
That's the ecosystem's fault.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Here's what this data, as I've been kind of just keeping an eye on it as it's come in, has said to me or has started to ring. I think Happy Valley United has done a better job. You could go look at the article we wrote on the blog last year when Micah Shrewsbury left and the marketing that was around them, because it was piss poor. It really was. And I feel like they've done a much better job of marketing themselves this year, between the two collectives at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has gotten better, but I think the thing that is missing the most here is the why. And I think that is what they're struggling to, and maybe this is not a Penn State issue in general, but I think that is the biggest thing that they are struggling to push home and hit home with, particularly. And maybe we can, like, I don't necessarily think this is like, I don't have data to prove this or whatever, but I do think this is, my gut would tell me this, more of these types of answers are your generation, or not necessarily. Like, I feel like my generation is okay with NIL, would donate if they could. We have that data point as well, but I just think the why is missing, and we've done things here a certain way for however many years. Why does it need to change? And that's the question that's not being answered, and that's why people aren't supporting.
I think it's, so yes and, right? Always stand-up comedy, yes and. Like, yes, you're right. And the other part is the why. There just has to be we need the money. That's this is how it's going to happen. Like that, there has to be that acknowledgement of the ecosystem as it is now. And that's how we're going to stay competitive. Coaches here can say they got to go to class. Teams want to compete for national championships. It's about excellence. It's about support. It's about putting the athletes in a position to succeed. And that's all true. And that's all the blue and white stuff that has been my lifetime. The other part is everybody else is paying their student athletes. If we don't do this, we need to do this to be competitive. We are not letting go. The message is we are not letting go of these other values. We believe these, but we need this too to be successful. And I don't know that I've overtly heard that in big public spaces. I mean, maybe smaller spaces among the givers in the NIL, whatever, and everybody's there, but they need to get more people singing the song so they can raise more money.
There's 2 points off of that. I'm going to write the second one down of the givers. The first one, I think, to me, that stands out there is, I think about this from the perspective of, like, anytime these articles come up on, like, On3, or even The Athletic has done a couple articles, like anonymous, like Recruiting Confidential anonymous or whatever, and kind of asking the recruits how did they rank it. It's funny to hear you say it that way, because I feel like I wonder internally if we are projecting that, right? Like, if we, the fan, are projecting the athlete only are picking schools based on your money. And I do think that for some athletes, they are picking it based on money. And I think that financial situations probably impact that greatly, like their home life and et cetera. I also think what's interesting is, and I think that's why it's interesting to hear you say that, because it does click that bell, is it hasn't been presented as the and, right? Like it's this or that. And I think presenting it as the and, which is what probably comes through on the, not maybe majority, but like a decent number of those types of articles, of it was a factor, but it wasn't necessarily always the factor. I think that's important to hear. And I think, again, we're not getting that as fans, as I sit here as a common average fan, in my opinion, who doesn't give that much money to Penn State type thing.
I
Yeah.
I think I get that vibe from the people who are getting recruited. Is it may not be the deciding factor. It's certainly part of it. Pete Gonzalez told us that when we talked about from the
Yeah,
parent side,
that's
right?
true.
Like, hey, it's a business decision. We talked about it. He didn't say it was the most important thing, but we certainly had an NIL discussion, right? And what does that mean? And he was thinking about a business opportunity for himself that could support NIL for the other player, right? So I think it goes back to kind of the drum I've been banging about the whole time. Go ahead and pay him. Go ahead and be transparent about it. And you can't say and. You can't say these are our core principles and we've got to do this to be competitive if you're not willing to be transparent, right? And that's the same thing with all these NIL deals. Well, you can't talk about them. Nobody, you can't tell what you're doing. I get, but the players do talk. The players probably do know, right? And I don't think it's going to make. Everybody's assuming they're making a boatload of money and they're doing stuff and might be grumpy about it. How about just telling the truth? Here's what it is. This is what it costs. People know how much a gallon of gas costs. People know how much it cost, their groceries cost, how much their trip to vacation costs. It's okay for an informed fan base and people who want to care about your program to know, you know what? Every player's making on the football team is making $25,000 minimum, and here's a couple other things that the better players are getting. And I think they'd understand the end because if we don't find that $25,000, then guess what? You're still going to be 9-3, or you're still going to
Right.
lose to Ohio State and Michigan.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I was thinking about the Ryan Day comment, right? Like Ohio State just fired their basketball coach and the buyout's going to be 15 million. How much did Ryan Day essentially lobby for? Essentially 15 million. And it seemingly lit a fire under Ohio State fan asses to donate, to chip in. And yeah, I think that's again, like I'm salaries are weird because like essentially these are salaries in my opinion, right? Um, and I want salary transparency as a millennial because that's important. Um, but I think we open ourselves up. I don't know, and this is where like it starts to get murky, right? Like, how do we critique a player when they're still a student athlete, and this is just that's where like to me it gets murky,
Right. We're just going to have to learn to deal with it because the ship has sailed, right? Like
right?
it's just, it is. Yep.
And so where I fall on that, right, is like that's on the collective itself to they don't necessarily need to open the books. I don't necessarily need to see, okay, football got raised. We raised $20 million for football. I doubt it's that much, but let's say it's $10 million for football last year. And 3 million for basketball and 3 million for hockey, right? Like I don't necessarily need that type of metrics, but I do want to see it put it in a competitive way because that's what Ryan Day did, and that's what kind of worked, right? Like
Well,
I
and
don't know.
here's why being able to tell the story matters and answer the question because it's not going to be the collective for more than a couple more years. Pretty soon, it's just going to be the university because these things are going to go underneath the athletic departments, right? So they're going to need to be able to figure out how to tell that story because they're going to be the one running it in a couple of years, maybe sooner.
Right, because I mean, and we had our numbers extravaganza of diving through that. You know, I think that will be a line item. I think it's just gonna eventually just gonna be a line item in those numbers of this is how much Penn State paid its student athletes besides their tuition, which I don't know. That we're spiraling into a rabbit hole, and I want to get back to the giver statement, but let me get into this rabbit hole real quick. It makes no damn sense to me why, and maybe this is because I just want free tuition for a while, all or whatever. Remember, this I'm the millennial on the show. Um, but it makes no damn sense to me why we have scholarships anymore. It makes no damn sense to me why we can't just say if you would like here's your here's your just come. Is Penn State missing out on that much money? Like,
No, but
I,
it's just a way of accounting for the endeavor, right?
yeah,
Like so it'll be there in some way. It just in a couple of years they may just give them all the money and they just do the accounting on the paper and nothing changes hands. Who knows? So
I don't know because I
we got
just
one
think
question left, two questions left.
okay, sorry, we're getting that sidetracked. The givers, can I the givers?
Go.
Let me just say this real quick. We have to figure this out, and this is probably the next thing I want to accomplish with this podcast is what is the ROI? What is the like why should I big money rich multi-million dollars in my pocket that I wish I had? Why should I donate to this? And I think that's I think that's we
So if you're
conflate the
out there
two.
listening and you're one of those listeners, we'd love to talk to you about why you
Yes.
give.
Yes. And then you can also just give to us. Okay, here we go. Have you financially supported Penn State's NIL collective? 20% of our respondents said
Okay.
yes. 28% said no, but I would if I could. So
Okay.
that leaves roughly 51% saying no, and I don't plan to,
Okay.
which
Those are
is
my thinking.
interesting. Which is interesting. You get that 70-30, yes, I support it. And then you
Well,
essentially get
feel
20
free
more.
and go do it, but I can't afford to, right? Maybe, maybe that's it. Maybe it's your, the millennials are like, oh no, I can't because I don't. So maybe when they hit the lottery, NIL will be one of the things they give to.
All right. We then asked kind of what we just got to as the crux of the question is, do you think college athletic departments should just pay the student athletes? There were two yes options and there was a no option. The majority said yes overall. 46% said yes, all athletes deserve a cut.
Okay.
33% said only the revenue generating sports
Okay.
deserve a cut, which unfortunately that's where I lie with it, which it probably hurts the non-revenue generating sports.
You could talk to those kids.
Yeah.
Those 700 student athletes you just took money away from because only 100 of them are relevant. Well, no, 100 in football. Yeah, 200 maybe at the most.
And
Go ahead.
then 21% said no. So 21% said, nah, I don't want you getting money. Okay, so that was like it for our like those types of questions. I'm gonna read just like some of the general comments that we often open up and allow to as I copy and paste those over here. NIL will ruin college football. It's out of control and no oversight. Penn State needs to step up with its NIL basketball program. Um, the players deserve a cut of the revenue directly from the university. It's asinine to make fans pay on top on top to direct who wins and loses. Guilt tripping alumni to give to athletics so that the team can compete is wrong. That's pretty harsh. There needs to be some regulation. It's the wild, wild west. Let's see. I already paid Penn State athletics enough. Athletes should receive a stipend rather than all the money going to coaches, administrators, and more stadium upgrades to the rich. That seems to be the sentiment right there. Like those kind of seem to be the sentiment of I'm forced to do this and I don't really want to do this, and goes back to the why.
I think so, I'm more on the why still, even though I'm no for a lot of the stuff with student athletes. I'm even a stronger no on layers of administrative assistants, assistant athletic directors. Somebody else, administrative assistants, got to answer the phone. Although Penn State's going to have teams calling soon, so they won't even be answering the phone; they'll be answering the computer. Yeah, I just think all these people on kids' backs is even more unseemly to me than paying them. And I appreciate I'm in a business where we teach people to present events and do things and communicate. But I'm sorry, Penn State has the same number of student athletes that it had all those years ago, except for hockey. And there are so many more layers of administrators. It's just almost ugly. I think student athletes should be mad at people that are supporting them in some ways, right? Those supporters, as opposed to the people who are on the outside paying the money.
Yeah, and it's I,
Which is
that
probably hurting us from getting athletic department guests as I say that out loud.
that's fine. That bloat is real. Like I feel
Yeah.
that bloat. I think if you pay attention, that bloat appears to be real, whether it's warranted or not. Probably is up for discussion. Well, so thank you to everybody that took part in our NIL survey. I think that was a good pulse on things, though. I think that was pretty much about how I felt about it. Pretty much about what I expected, but just wanted to kind of confirm that. So
Take the time. It was great. Thank you. Thanks for making a good, quick survey too. It's like 5 questions and whatever else. That was efficient.
we're in and out here quick.